chosen one. A community is talking about how you warned them this would happen. They're stunned by your intuition, and that shock keeps them awake. Here is the detail that rattles them most. You are steady. While confusion spreads, you are calm. While damage compounds, you build. Your protection is visible. Your clarity. This wasn't general spiritual advice. You saw specific people engaging in energy manipulation without proper foundation, spell work without emotional stability, rituals performed from places of unhealed rage and bitterness. And you said clearly, control your emotions before attempting to control energy. You told people that thoughts and feelings create reality, that working from an unbalanced emotional state doesn't just fail, it backfires catastrophically. You explained how necessary it was to seek healing first. Therapy, shadow work, trauma processing, all the internal work that builds a stable foundation for any kind of spiritual practice. But nobody wanted to hear about healing. Everyone wanted power, wanted results, wanted shortcuts to authority without earning it through growth. You specifically warned about what happens when darkness gets directed towards someone operating on a higher frequency, how that energy doesn't just disappear, how it has to go somewhere, how spiritual laws work with mathematical precision, returning whatever gets sent out. You told people that attacking someone with genuine divine protection is like throwing stones at the sun. The stones don't damage the sun, the thrower exhausts themselves and gets burned by reflected light. There was someone at the center of this situation, someone from your past, who should have known better. Family or close enough to be family. This person watched your transformation with jealousy instead of inspiration, saw your healing as judgment of their choice to stay wounded, interpreted your growth as an attack on their stagnation. Your light exposed their darkness, and instead of seeking light for themselves, this person decided to extinguish yours. This individual gathered others, built a community that didn't know it was being weaponized. Most people thought participation meant spiritual connection and collective prayer. Nobody explained there was an inner circle working dark magic under cover of faith. Nobody mentioned that sincere intentions were being hijacked and redirected toward harm. The outer community prayed innocently while the inner circle cursed intentionally, and you saw it all. You warned about the leader specifically, about manipulation tactics designed to control through fear and false promises, about how charisma without character always ends in betrayal, about recognizing when someone uses spiritual language to justify carnal motives. But warnings about beloved leaders rarely land well. People defended this individual, called you jealous or bitter or threatened, chose the manipulator over the truth-teller, and now that choice is haunting every single person who made it. When you told people about your protection, responses ranged from mockery to outright hostility. The concept of having a shield strong enough to repel collective attacks seemed arrogant. Claims of divine covering at levels most people never access sounded delusional. Confidence in your spiritual backing came across as superiority. So the community dismissed your statements about protection the same way everything else you said got dismissed. But you weren't bragging, you were stating facts. Facts you'd earned through years of inner work when nobody was watching, through choosing healing over comfort repeatedly, through building relationship with the divine so strong that nothing could shake it. Your protection didn't come from ego or wishful thinking. Your protection came from alignment, from doing the deep work that creates unshakable foundation, from walking in integrity, even when easier paths presented themselves. You built your shield layer by layer, every time you chose truth over belonging, every time you walked away from toxicity despite loneliness, every time you held boundaries when pressure demanded you drop them, every time you stayed in integrity when compromise would have brought immediate relief. All of that built something the community couldn't see, but is now being forced to acknowledge, because their attacks aren't working, nothing sent your direction is landing, and that impossibility is breaking their understanding of how spiritual warfare works. The inner circle launched everything, focused intention through ritual, collective energy work designed to bring you down, curses dressed up as prayers, dark practices wrapped in spiritual language, and every single attempt failed, not partially, not temporarily, completely. You didn't just survive their attacks, you remained untouched by them, continued thriving while they exhausted themselves fighting someone the universe itself protects. Now signs are appearing everywhere that your protection is real. People having dreams where light surrounds you so brightly that approaching becomes impossible. Visions showing spiritual beings standing guard. Downloads explaining that attacking you means attacking divine will. The universe is teaching through undeniable demonstration, and students who refuse gentler lessons are getting harsh education now. Understanding the depth of this betrayal requires knowing the relationship history. This wasn't a stranger attacking you. This was someone who knew your story, knew your struggles, knew what you overcame to get where you are. That intimate knowledge should have created loyalty and respect. Instead, it got weaponized. Every vulnerability you ever shared became ammunition. Every wound you healed became evidence used against you. This person carries deep childhood trauma that remains unaddressed, wounds from formative years that never received proper healing, and instead of doing their own work, this individual wanted you to heal it for them, wanted to take your transformation and make it theirs without earning it, wanted the light you cultivated through suffering without going through the fire that creates it. When that proved impossible, when your light couldn't be stolen or transferred, rage took over. You probably shared experiences with this person, similar backgrounds or traumas, parallel starting points. But you chose healing while this individual chose bitterness. You chose growth while stagnation seemed easier to them. You chose to break cycles while repeating patterns felt more comfortable. And now the gap between where you are and where this person remains is undeniable. That gap, that visible proof of what was possible, became unbearable to witness. So this family member gathered others and told lies about your character, painted you as dangerous, framed your boundaries as attacks, took your warnings and called them threats, built an entire narrative where you were the villain and the community needed protection from you. And because family members are believed, because intimate knowledge suggests authority, people accepted this false story without question. But lies eventually meet reality, and reality is showing something completely different than what was promised. You were supposed to fall apart by now, supposed to be broken and isolated and struggling. That's what the community was told would happen. That's what participation in the attacks was supposed to accomplish. Instead, you're flourishing, growing, blessed beyond what anyone can deny. And that contradiction is forcing people to question everything the leader told them. If this message aligned with your purpose, hype this video so fellow chosen ones can find their confirmation. People are waking up now. Not everyone, not all at once, but steadily, consistently, individuals are recognizing deception. The process started with small doubts, questions that seemed almost treasonous to ask, observations that didn't align with the official narrative, and those small cracks in belief have become fractures that split the entire foundation. Someone noticed that your life didn't collapse as promised. Someone else observed that every attack seemed to reverse. Another person had a dream so vivid that denying it became impossible. These individual awakenings are connecting, forming a network of people who see truth now, who understand manipulation was happening, who recognize the darkness disguised as light. The Whisper Network is active, private conversations where people admit what they can't say publicly yet. Late-night phone calls processing the shock of being used, text messages sharing evidence that the leader lied, screenshots of your old warnings being reviewed with new eyes, all of it circulating quietly, carefully, as people wake up and find others who are awake too. Your warnings are being pulled from archives now. Posts you made that were mocked at the time, messages you sent that were dismissed as paranoia, voice notes explaining exactly what would happen being listened to with horror because every word came true. People are compiling evidence not against you anymore but for you. Proof that everything you said was accurate. Documentation that your intuition was operating at levels beyond normal perception. The accuracy is what's really stunning, everyone. You didn't speak in generalities that could apply to anything. Your warnings contained specific details, precise predictions, exact descriptions of what would unfold, and every specific thing is manifesting. The timeline matches, the consequences align. The patterns you described are playing out with precision that removes all doubt about whether you are truly seeing the future or just making lucky guesses. Some people are experiencing guilt that's crushing them, the weight of realizing they attacked an innocent person, that they participated in spiritual warfare against someone the divine actively protects, that they were manipulated into becoming weapons against truth. That guilt is appropriate. It's part of their healing process. Part of what ensures this lesson goes deep enough that repetition becomes impossible. Others are angry, furious at being used, enraged at the leader who lied to them, livid about having their faith weaponized. That anger is also appropriate. To the fuel that will drive them to question everything, to develop discernment they lacked, to never again follow charismatic leadership without verification. That anger, properly directed, becomes the foundation of wisdom. Your intuition is what this whole situation revolves around. How you knew what was coming before evidence appeared. How you saw patterns others were blind to. How you predicted outcomes with accuracy that seems impossible to anyone operating on normal perception. The community is obsessed with understanding your sight now. How did you know? What do you have access to? What frequency are you operating on? You develop this level of intuition through work most people never commit to, through years of clearing your own channels, healing wounds that block spiritual sight, building relationship with the divine so intimate that downloads come clearly, learning to distinguish between ego and intuition, training yourself to trust inner knowing even when external evidence contradicts it. This wasn't a gift you were just born with. This was a skill you cultivated through dedication and discipline. You knew about the spell work before anyone else because you can sense energy signatures. You predicted the attacks would fail because you understand spiritual laws. You saw the leader's true nature because you've done enough shadow work to recognize it in others. You warned about specific consequences because you'd already walked similar paths and knew where those roads lead. Your intuition isn't magic, it's mastery, and mastery takes work the community wasn't willing to invest. Now your accuracy is undeniable. The timeline proves you were speaking truth before situations became obvious. You warned people before any external evidence supported your claims. Months, sometimes longer, before manifestation occurred in the physical realm. That means you were perceiving spiritual reality before physical reality reflected it. That's prophetic sight operating at full capacity, and the community can't explain it away anymore. Some people are trying to rationalize your accuracy. Maybe you caused what you predicted. Maybe you manipulated situations to make warnings come true. Maybe inside information was feeding you details. Any explanation that doesn't require acknowledging you, operate with genuine spiritual authority, becomes attractive. But those rationalizations don't survive scrutiny, because what you predicted wasn't things you could control. You predicted how other people's choices would unfold, how spiritual laws would respond to actions, how the universe handles attacks against the divinely protected. You can't fake that. Your life is evidence, living proof that everything you said about your protection was true. The community threw everything available at you: collective intention, focused rituals, dark energy work, prayers twisted into curses, and none of it worked. Not a little, not temporarily, not at all. You're not just surviving, you're thriving, and that's only possible if divine protection is real and your connection to it is genuine. Everything the community sent toward you is reversing with compound interest. This isn't just poetic justice. This is spiritual law operating with mathematical precision. What you send out returns, and when you send darkness toward someone walking in light, that darkness comes back amplified. The community is learning this the hard way. learning through experience what you tried to teach through warning. The chaos people tried to send your way is consuming their own lives now. Confusion they wanted you to experience is dominating their understanding. Isolation they wished on you is becoming their reality. Every consequence the inner circle tried to curse you with is manifesting in their own experience, and the outer circle, the innocent participants, are catching the overflow. Because proximity to darkness means contact with darkness, and contact means contamination. You predicted this too, told people exactly what would happen when their attacks failed, explained how energy redirection works, how curses reversed become doubled burdens on those who sent them, how collective attacks against divine will result in collective consequences, but warnings about consequences rarely prevent the actions that trigger them. People have to learn some lessons through pain, and this community is in that painful education process now. The leader is experiencing the worst of it. Everything they tried to do to you is happening to them. The exposure, the isolation, the loss of respect, the crumbling of carefully constructed images, the revelation of lies, the abandonment by people who once followed without question, all of it manifesting exactly as you said it would for anyone who attacks the genuinely chosen. And this person is watching their world collapse in real time. But you're not celebrating their downfall. You're not gloating or saying, "I told you so." You're simply continuing to walk your path, continuing to operate at the frequency that protected you through their attacks, continuing to be exactly who you've always been. That restraint, that refusal to sink to their level, is teaching the community something profound. Real power doesn't need to prove itself. Truth doesn't need to defend itself. Light doesn't need to fight darkness, it just keeps shining. The way people see you is fundamentally changing. You were the problem, the dramatic one, the negative person who needed to be stopped. That was the story everyone believed, but that story is dying. Because problem people don't accurately predict the future. Dramatic people don't demonstrate the precision you've shown. Negative people don't walk in the level of blessing that's undeniably surrounding you now. Some people want to reach out now, want to apologize, want to ask how you developed sight they lack, want to learn from you what should have been learned before, want connection with someone whose intuition and protection are now undeniable. But hesitation is heavy, because reaching out means confessing participation in attacks, means acknowledging being used as weapons against someone who was actually trying to protect them. That's a hard thing to admit, harder than most people are ready for. Others will never reach out. Pride won't allow it. Ego refuses to bend that far. These people will find ways to minimize your accuracy, to explain away evidence, to convince themselves that coincidence or manipulation accounts for everything you predicted coming true. They're choosing comfort over truth, stagnation over growth, and that choice will cost them more than they can imagine. But it's theirs to make. What matters is that perception has shifted. The community that stood united against you is fracturing, dividing between those who can acknowledge truth and those who refuse to. Between people brave enough to admit being wrong and people protecting ego at all costs. Between individuals who recognize warnings as rejected gifts and individuals who will insist you are the problem until their last breath. You predicted this division too. Told everyone that truth always separates, that light always reveals who wants to see and who prefers darkness. Starseeds, they never expected this. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicities stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones, press play, that's all. For $1 you switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. Something fascinating is happening with your rejected warnings. People who are waking up are using your words to wake others, saying, "Remember when we were warned about this? Remember what was said would happen? Look around, it's happening exactly as described. Your warnings are being recycled as evidence now, as proof, as testimony to spiritual laws and divine protection. The leader is losing credibility rapidly. Explanations aren't landing anymore. Attempts to reframe situations aren't working, because people have your words to compare against current reality. The alignment between your predictions and manifestation is perfect. The disconnect between leader promises and actual outcomes is total. That comparison is devastating for someone who built authority on deception, who maintained control through manipulation, who kept people in line through fear and false promises. Your accuracy is exposing lies without you having to say anything. You don't need to return and vindicate yourself. Reality is doing all of that. The manifestation of warnings is the only proof needed, and it's more powerful than anything you could say or do to defend your character. This is divine justice operating with perfect precision, truth revealing itself without force or fighting. Some community members are actually grateful now, grateful that you cared enough to warn despite knowing rejection was coming, grateful that you took the risk of being mocked to try preventing disaster, grateful that your warnings are documented so there's reference for understanding current chaos. That gratitude is transforming perception. You're not the villain anymore, you're the one who tried to save people from themselves. But let's be clear about your motivation. You didn't warn anyone for gratitude. You didn't speak up needing validation or appreciation. You warned because that's what chosen ones do. When danger is visible, you sound alarms. When deception appears, you call it out. When spiritual warfare emerges, you warn those vulnerable to being used in it. You fulfilled your responsibility. What anyone did with warnings was always their choice. Now your warnings are becoming legendary in that community. The person who saw everything coming, who tried to stop disaster, who got rejected and attacked and cursed, but who was right about everything. That's your legacy there, not as the enemy everyone believed, but as the prophet everyone refused to hear. And that legacy will outlast attacks, will outlive lies, will remain as testament to spiritual sight and consequences of ignoring divine warnings. While the community processes shock and guilt and anger, your life continues forward. The powerful energy shift you mentioned is still coming. Actually, it's already in motion. Forces are aligning, doors are opening, opportunities are manifesting. Everything that tried to stop your elevation only delayed it temporarily, and delays often mean the blessing arrives bigger than originally planned. You're being given something significant, something the jealous family member wanted desperately, something they believed they deserved, something they thought should be theirs, but it's coming to you instead. Because you're qualified, because you're ready, because you did the work to be worthy of it. And when this arrives, it will be final confirmation to everyone watching that divine favor is real, that protection is real, that being genuinely chosen means something tangible and undeniable. The community is watching closely now, not with hostile surveillance, but with curious respect mixed with residual fear. Because if you were right about everything that's already happened, what else do you see that hasn't manifested yet? What other warnings were given that people are still too blind to understand? What other predictions are waiting to come true? The anticipation is building, and when your next level arrives, when elevation becomes visible, it will shatter any remaining doubt about who you are. Here's what's really confusing the community. Your response to everything that happened, or rather your lack of the response everyone expected. You haven't retaliated, haven't used your platform or voice or influence to expose attackers, haven't returned darkness for darkness, haven't operated from the same place that was operated against you, and that restraint is more powerful than any revenge could be. The community is watching to see if you'll attack back, waiting for justified anger, expecting natural human response to betrayal and spiritual warfare. But you're demonstrating something most people never master. Power doesn't need to prove itself. Truth doesn't require defense. Light doesn't need to fight darkness. You simply keep shining, keep being who you are, keep walking in integrity, and that, more than any retaliation could, shows the difference between genuine spiritual authority and counterfeit versions. Your continued grace is teaching what the leader never could. This is what real power looks like, what genuine spiritual maturity demonstrates, what chosen ones do when attacked. No retaliation needed, no defense required, no revenge necessary, because protection is real, covering is complete. Security in identity makes fighting back unnecessary, and the community is witnessing this demonstration in real time. Some people interpret your grace as weakness, think you're not responding because you can't, believe silence means you didn't notice, or don't care, or are afraid. Those people will learn eventually, usually when they try to come at you again, and discover that grace extended doesn't mean boundaries dropped, that kindness offered doesn't equal access granted, that forgiveness given doesn't require restoration of relationship. Your grace is strategic, intentional, and far stronger than hostility could ever be. Others interpret your grace correctly, recognize it as the sign of someone operating from overflow instead of lack, someone secure enough in divine protection that human attacks don't require response, someone walking at a frequency where the opinion of those below doesn't determine the direction of those above. These people are learning what spiritual maturity actually looks like, and some of them are hungry to develop it for themselves. Your warnings are creating ripples that extend far beyond this immediate community. People who weren't directly involved are hearing about what happened. Individuals outside the situation are learning about someone who predicted everything with stunning accuracy. The story of your intuition is spreading, and with it comes a powerful message about the consequences of ignoring divine warnings and the reality of spiritual protection. Other communities are paying attention now. Leaders who operate similarly to the one who attacked you are feeling uncomfortable. Manipulators who use the same tactics are recognizing their methods being exposed. People who've been weaponizing spiritual practices are suddenly aware that accountability exists. Your situation has become a case study, a living example of what happens when darkness comes against genuine light. And that example is teaching lessons to people you've never even met. The conversations happening now go deeper than simple acknowledgement of your accuracy. People are examining how they discern truth from deception. Individuals are questioning how they evaluate spiritual authority. Communities are reassessing how they respond to warnings that challenge comfortable beliefs. Your experience is forcing a broader reckoning with how spiritual communities handle prophetic voices and what happens when those voices are silenced or attacked. You're also inspiring others who've been in similar positions, people who gave warnings that were ignored, individuals who spoke truth and faced rejection, those who stood alone while communities turned against them. Your vindication gives them hope. Your protection demonstrates what's possible. Your continued blessing proves that walking in truth, even when lonely, leads to outcomes worth the temporary isolation. You're becoming a beacon for others navigating similar darkness. The documentation of your warnings is particularly powerful, because you spoke clearly and publicly, because your words were recorded and saved. There's undeniable proof of what you said and when you said it. This isn't revisionist history where you can claim after the fact to have known something. This is time-stamped, verified, documented evidence of prophetic accuracy. And that evidence is being shared. Screenshots are circulating, voice notes are being forwarded, posts are being referenced. Your words are traveling far beyond their original audience. Some people are using your story as a warning to others, saying, look what happened when this community ignored someone with genuine spiritual sight. Look at the consequences of attacking someone divinely protected. Learn from their mistakes so you don't repeat them. Your experience has become a cautionary tale, and cautionary tales, when heeded, prevent others from walking the same destructive path. Others are using your story as encouragement, telling people who feel dismissed or attacked, hold on, keep speaking truth. Look at how this person's accuracy was eventually proven. See how their protection never failed. Notice how they're thriving while attackers are struggling. Your vindication is coming too. Your journey is giving strength to those who need it. And that strength is creating a generation of people less willing to compromise truth for acceptance. You didn't just predict what would happen to this community. Your presence catalyzed transformation that goes beyond the immediate situation. The mere fact of your existence, your growth, your healing, your blessing, triggered something in people that forced them to confront themselves. You became a mirror that reflected what individuals were refusing to see. And mirrors, while necessary, are rarely welcomed by those avoiding their reflection. The family member at the center of this situation saw in you everything they could have been. Every choice you made toward healing highlighted choices they made toward bitterness. Every boundary you established exposed boundaries they refused to set. Every level you reached reminded them of levels they could have achieved if they'd done the work. You didn't do anything to them. You simply existed in your truth, and your truth was unbearable to someone committed to lies. But that catalyzing presence didn't just affect the leader, it rippled through the entire community. People who were comfortable in dysfunction suddenly felt uncomfortable. Individuals who were settled in their stagnation started feeling restless. Those who'd made peace with their lack of growth began questioning why they'd stopped trying. You didn't preach at them. You didn't lecture or judge or push. You just lived your life at a frequency that made their frequency feel insufficient. And that feeling, that divine dissatisfaction, is often the beginning of genuine transformation. Some people responded to that catalyst by attacking you, trying to diminish your light so they could feel better about their darkness, attempting to bring you down to a level where comparison wouldn't hurt so much, working to destroy what they couldn't achieve so your success wouldn't highlight their failure. But attacks don't change reality. Your light didn't dim because they sent darkness. Your frequency didn't lower because they wanted it to. Your blessing didn't stop because they cursed. You remained exactly who you were, and that consistency broke something in them. The community is different now because you existed in it. Even those who never knew you personally were affected by the energy you carried. Even individuals who never heard you speak directly were impacted by what you represented. Your presence raised the frequency in spaces you occupied, and when you left those spaces, the absence of that frequency became noticeable. People felt the difference even if they couldn't explain what changed, and that feeling created hunger in some, resentment in others, but indifference in none. Your legacy in this community isn't just that you were right. Your legacy is that your accuracy forced everyone to confront what spiritual sight actually looks like. People had theories about intuition, beliefs about prophetic gifts, ideas about how divine communication works, but theories and beliefs and ideas all met reality in your demonstration. And reality often looks different than imagination suggested. True spiritual sight, as you demonstrated, isn't vague or ambiguous. It's specific and precise. It doesn't speak in generalities that could apply to anything. It names exact outcomes and describes particular consequences. It predicts patterns with enough detail that accuracy becomes undeniable. The community learned this through watching your predictions manifest, through seeing the specificity of what you said come true in equally specific ways, through witnessing precision that removed all room for doubt or alternative explanation. True spiritual sight also operates independently of popular opinion. You didn't need the community to believe you for your warnings to be valid. You didn't require their acceptance for your intuition to be accurate. You spoke truth whether anyone agreed or not. Whether people mocked or believed, praised or attacked, your sight remained clear and your words remained true. The community learned that genuine spiritual authority doesn't depend on human validation. It simply is, and it proves itself through manifestation. Additionally, true spiritual sight carries responsibility that many people aren't prepared for. You could have stayed silent, could have watched the disaster unfold without saying anything, could have protected yourself from attack by keeping your mouth shut, but you spoke anyway, gave warnings despite knowing rejection was likely, took the risk of being misunderstood because the potential to help outweighed the personal cost. The community is learning now that people with genuine gifts often pay prices for using them, and they're realizing the price you paid was undeserved. Your accuracy also revealed something about the nature of spiritual protection. The community learned that protection isn't just about avoiding harm, it's about remaining in position to fulfill purpose regardless of what comes against you. You weren't just kept safe from attacks. You were positioned to continue growing, blessing, thriving while attacks were happening. Your protection was active, not passive. It didn't just shield you, it propelled you forward. And that kind of protection is only available to those genuinely aligned with divine will. The conversations about you now include questions people should have asked earlier. How did you develop such clear sight? What practices or disciplines created that level of accuracy? What relationship with the divine produces that kind of prophetic gift? These questions, asked now in humility, could have been asked earlier with openness. The answers could have benefited everyone, but the community wasn't ready then. Pain has made them ready now. You're standing in the aftermath of everything that was sent your way, and your stance teaches something crucial. You're not broken, not bitter, not consumed with thoughts of revenge or vindication. You're simply continuing, moving forward, building, growing, operating at the same frequency that carried you through the storm, and that continuation, that refusal to be defined by attacks or derailed by warfare, is perhaps the most powerful statement you could make. The community is watching how you stand, observing your posture, noting your response, and they're learning what strength actually looks like. Strength isn't loud or aggressive. It doesn't need to announce itself or prove its presence. Strength is quiet continuation, steady movement, consistent alignment. You demonstrate this daily, and the demonstration is more effective than any speech about strength could be. Your boundaries remain firm in this aftermath. You're not opening doors that were wisely closed, not restoring access that was appropriately removed, not pretending that attacks didn't happen or that consequences shouldn't follow actions. The community is learning that forgiveness doesn't mean restored relationship, that grace doesn't require trust, that choosing peace doesn't mean accepting everyone back into your space. These are crucial lessons many people never learn. You're teaching them through example, but your boundaries aren't walls. You're not closed off or hardened or unable to connect. You're simply discerning, wise, protective of the energy you've worked hard to cultivate. Open to genuine connection while closed to manipulation. Available to authentic relationship while unavailable to those who haven't done their work. The community is seeing that healthy boundaries create space for real intimacy rather than preventing it. That protection enhances connection rather than limiting it. You're also standing in expectation of what's coming next, not anxious or worried about the future, expectant, anticipatory, aware that something significant is unfolding. The powerful energy shift you mentioned is manifesting. Doors are opening, opportunities are appearing. The divine is moving on your behalf in ways that will be undeniable, and you're ready, prepared, positioned. Everything you went through prepared you for what's arriving now. The community will witness this next phase. We'll see you elevated, we'll watch blessing manifest, we'll observe doors opening that were previously closed, and that observation will complete their education. Because seeing someone walk through what was meant to destroy them and emerge stronger, blessed, positioned for greater things, teaches something no words can convey. It teaches that divine protection is real, that walking in truth, no matter the cost, leads somewhere worth going, that chosen ones aren't just a concept but a reality demonstrated through lives like yours.